Ah, my beautifully broken friends. The ones who walk into chaos like it's a second home. The ones who don't flinch when the floor collapses because the ground has betrayed them so many times. They stopped expecting it to hold. You. Yeah, you. The one wearing a grin that doesn't quite reach your eyes. You've been quiet lately, but not weak. No, you've just been calculating, rewiring the furnace, letting the storm sharpen its teeth inside you. They saw you trip, and they thought you fell. They saw the mess, the blood, the wreckage, the humiliating details. And they whispered, "That's it. That one's done." But they were looking at the surface, weren't they? They didn't see the war machine underneath your ribs, didn't hear the gears clicking into place while the whole damn world was busy watching someone else. Let me ask you something. Have you ever watched people celebrate your failure like it was a national holiday? Have you ever seen fake concern dressed up like kindness, smiles laced with venom? Are you okay? They don't really care. They just want a front row seat when you break. You've been there. I know you have. Because no one gets this twisted unless they've crawled through the gutters of humiliation, tasted the rot of betrayal, and been forced to smile while everyone pointed at the corpse of your reputation. But here's the part they didn't expect. You didn't scream. You didn't beg. You didn't throw your hands up and ask for mercy. You just stood there, inside the horror, like you'd been waiting for it. Because people like you don't panic when the lights go out. You start building a home in the dark. See, they don't understand what kind of nervous system you've developed. How many nights you've paced floors with clenched teeth and quiet fury, training yourself to stay sane while your world turned into a psychological house of mirrors. They're shocked? Of course they are. They still think you're playing the same game as them. The game of approval, image, neatness, control. But you burned your rule book a long time ago. You're not here to be palatable. You're here to survive and make sure they remember your name every time they try to write you out of the damn script. And that situation, that horrific, putrid, humiliating mess that they expected to swallow you whole. You didn't just handle it. You absorbed it. You wore it. You let it poison you. And then you made it part of your bloodstream. Because once you've danced with humiliation and laughed in its face, you don't fear it anymore. You own it. And that's why they're scared. They can't categorize you anymore. You're not the victim, not the villain, not the comeback story they can manipulate. You're something else now, something they don't have language for, and it terrifies them. You're not supposed to still be standing, not after that, not after they dragged your name through filth that they created, then handed you a mop and said, "Clean it up," with a smile. You were supposed to shatter, melt into something forgettable, become a cautionary tale they could whisper about at brunch. But you didn't shatter. You recalibrated. Took the shame they shoved down your throat and carved it into something sharp. You didn't ask for justice. You didn't whine for fairness. You just stared straight through the panic and let it do its worst. That kind of composure, it's unnatural to them. People freeze when things go off script. They stutter, blame, retreat. But you walked into the fire with your eyes wide open, like you'd been starving for the heat. It's not that you enjoy pain. You just stopped expecting anything else. And when that horrific moment came, that thing that should have broken you in half, you didn't flinch. You smirked. Because you'd already died, in smaller ways 1,000 times over. Behind closed doors, when nobody was watching, when no one cared. That's the part they don't talk about. the quiet deaths. The moments when you were erased in real time, gaslighted into silence, gritted your teeth, and kept moving through rooms that wanted to swallow you whole. You got used to walking through minefields with a poker face. You stopped waiting for applause. You trained yourself to breathe underwater, because every time you reached for air, someone tried to drown you just to test your limits. They wonder how you did it, how you didn't spiral, didn't combust, didn't beg for validation. And the answer? You stopped needing oxygen from people who only give you smoke. Your power isn't loud. It doesn't stomp or scream or demand to be noticed. It walks in with a haunted calm, a silence that unnerves the room, because it's not afraid to be misunderstood anymore. You wore that horrific situation like a second skin, not because you wanted it, but because life threw it at you with such violence you decided it might as well serve a purpose. You didn't deny it. You didn't hide. You stared it in the face and absorbed it. And the moment you did, you became something untouchable. Because once you've endured the unspeakable, once you've swallowed betrayal, humiliation, abandonment, and didn't crumble, what the hell are they going to do to you now? They talk about you like a myth now, whispers behind curtains. Did you see how they handled that? I don't know how anyone comes back from something like that and you're just walking, unbothered, scarred, yes, but more precise. Like a surgeon who's been inside their own chest and learned every nerve by heart. There's a darkness behind your eyes that wasn't there before. Not rage, not sadness either. It's something colder, something more surgical, a kind of stillness that only shows up after everything's already been taken from you, and you realized you could live without any of it. That's what unsettles them. You didn't just survive the horror, you made it irrelevant. They keep replaying the footage, trying to spot the glitch, looking for that one moment where you should have cracked. The twitch in your eye, the quiver in your jaw, anything to confirm you're still human enough to break the way they would have. But you didn't twitch. You didn't crack. You stood in that horrific moment like it was a mirror and forced them to watch their projections die right in front of them. That kind of strength doesn't come from motivation posters. It's not built in therapy rooms with scented candles and soft encouragement. It's forged in silence, in ugly, blistering silences where nobody texts back, nobody explains, nobody saves you. And you just sit there, marinating in your own shattered sense of control until something inside you reconstructs itself without permission. You didn't read your way out of that horror. You didn't meditate your way through it. You bled through it. You stayed awake on nights that felt like eternity's waiting room, wondering if the damage was permanent, and secretly hoping it was, because at least that would mean it had a name. They thought you were emotionally fragile. They didn't realize you'd been in full-blown psychological warfare for years, and just got really good at hiding the casualties. You learned to smile while internally setting fire to every lie that kept you compliant. You learned to nod while your boundaries were violated, then came back later, with eyes colder, voice calmer, and the kind of silence that makes people start confessing without you asking a thing. That's what makes you dangerous. You don't threaten. You haunt. You linger in people's memory like the last thing they saw before the floor collapsed. And that situation, the one everyone's still whispering about, the one that stunk of humiliation and public decay, you didn't just walk through it. You recoded your nervous system mid-crisis. While they watched from a distance, waiting for the mess to define you, you were inside it, collecting data, learning patterns, discovering just how many masks people wear when there's blood in the water. You stopped expecting fairness. You started calculating. That's when everything changed. Because once your self-worth no longer depends on what they think, once you stop needing them to validate your version of the story, you become untouchable. Not loud, not arrogant, not even defiant. Just done. Done performing. Done explaining. Done dancing for crumbs of respect from people who wouldn't last 10 minutes in your skin. They say you're cold now, detached, darker. But what they call cold is just clarity. What they call detached is just finally choosing yourself over their comfort. What they call dark is just you refusing to apologize for the parts of you that kept you alive. You handled that horror like a machine running on the edge of madness. Not perfect, not polished, but precise, unyielding. And if they thought that was the worst of you, they haven't seen the version that crawled out of it. You didn't walk out of that mess with your head held high. You crawled out of it with blood in your mouth and a stare that made people shift in their seats. You weren't trying to impress anyone. You were just trying to not disappear. Because when you're inside the kind of situation that warps your reflection, that twists your voice until you barely recognize it, you don't come out looking heroic. You come out looking like someone who's seen too much and stopped pretending that kindness was ever going to be enough. They thought that situation would fix you, break you down, humble you, remind you of your place. But it didn't fix you. It exposed you. The mask didn't just slip. You tore it off, and for the first time, they saw the version of you that doesn't filter pain, that doesn't wait its turn, that doesn't dilute truth to keep the room comfortable. You stopped caring about being understood. You started speaking in a language that only survivors can decode. A kind of brutal honesty that slices through small talk like a scalpel. You didn't just handle it. You studied the anatomy of destruction. You learned where the weak spots are in the social fabric, where people start lying to themselves just to keep their hands clean. You became fluent in betrayal. You memorized the sound of loyalty fading into excuse. You learned the tone people use when they're pretending they didn't enjoy watching you fall apart. And still, you didn't retaliate. You didn't expose them. You didn't scream. You just became something they can't read anymore. Something too nuanced, too layered, too real to be played with. People don't know what to do with that. They're used to redemption arcs with neat endings, apologies with soft lighting, forgiveness served like a warm cup of tea. But you didn't give them any of that. You gave them silence, with eyes that said, "I watched you abandon me and remembered the timestamp." You don't need revenge. Your memory is revenge. You move different now. Less predictable, more surgical. You say less, but it cuts deeper. You look people in the eye and they flinch. Not because you're angry, but because you're awake in a way they've never had to be. That's what this situation did. That's the cost of surviving something that should have buried you. It didn't leave you unscathed. It left you rearranged, emotionally lopsided in some places, razor sharp in others, and all of it earned. Because you didn't just go through hell. You learned how to walk comfortably in it. You stopped waiting for rescue. You became your own extraction team. And still they whisper, "I don't know how they kept it together. I would have lost it. They don't understand. You didn't keep it together. You just let it fall apart in a place they couldn't see. You let the chaos mold you in private until your strength wasn't loud. It was undeniable. You didn't survive that situation with grace. You endured it with grit under your nails and a clenched jaw that refused to open for anyone's comfort. You weren't graceful, you were strategic. Grace is a luxury. You were too busy holding yourself together with mental duct tape and unspoken rage. People don't realize what it takes to keep breathing when everything around you is designed to choke you. When every glance feels like surveillance, every question is a trap, and every silence is an accusation dressed in polite tones. They call it horrific, like it's some passing event. You lived in it. You navigated it like a minefield, wearing a smile that wasn't yours. You mastered the art of being functional while imploding, of showing up, answering calls, sending emails, laughing at dumb jokes while something inside you was screaming into a void. And nobody knew, because nobody cared to ask the right way. You became your own emergency contact. Not by choice, but because you realized halfway through that nobody was coming, that the people closest to you were just spectators in better seats, watching with popcorn while you unraveled under fluorescent lights. And the worst part, you still protected them, still tried to make them feel okay about what you were going through, still filtered your collapse into digestible pieces so no one had to confront how deeply you were unraveling. That kind of self-erasure rewires something in you. It teaches you how to shrink with precision, how to bleed quietly, how to become invisible while on fire. But even fire learns to shape itself. And that's what you did. You didn't rise from the ashes. You collected them, turned them into armor, wore them like a second skin, because healing wasn't coming fast enough and survival needed a costume. You walk different now, more weight in your steps. Not because you're heavy, but because every step is a choice you weren't supposed to have anymore. People can feel it. They sense the depth in you, and it unnerves them, because they're still operating on surface-level instincts, while you're 12 floors beneath your own skin, maneuvering with surgical awareness. You don't just feel things. You analyze the feeling mid-impact, trace its roots, then file it under not lethal before it even lands. They're impressed. They should be afraid, because the version of you that handled that horror isn't built for entertainment. It's not charming. It's not here to be liked. It exists for one purpose: to never need saving again. You didn't come out of that disaster looking inspirational. You came out looking like a crime scene that chose to walk away, and they don't know what to do with that. They're used to stories with redemption arcs and soft lighting, where pain is sanitized and palatable, where healing looks like yoga and forgiveness quotes. But you didn't heal to make people feel better about the things they ignored. You healed like a weapon learns to stay loaded, quietly, patiently, without announcement. Because when that situation tried to annihilate you, you didn't fight it with speeches. You didn't rise with poetry in your mouth. You just didn't die. And that was loud enough. You learned to stop reacting. You let the chaos scream in your face, and you blinked slow, like someone who's already survived worse than anything it could throw. And in that stillness, you became something dangerous. The kind of person who no longer rushes to explain themselves, because they've realized truth doesn't need defense when survival is the only witness. You're not bitter. That's the part they keep misunderstanding. Bitterness still cares. You don't. You're not looking for closure. You've closed every door with your own hands, even the ones with people still behind them, banging, begging, bargaining. You didn't flinch. You just turned the handle and walked away, like it wasn't even personal. Because at some point, you stopped trying to be understood and started building a life where being misunderstood was the point. Where your silence isn't a retreat, it's a weapon. Where your boundaries aren't lines in the sand, they're walls lined with everything you used to tolerate and will never allow again. They say you're intense now, that there's something in your eyes that wasn't there before. And they're right. There's a clarity in you that comes from watching everything burn and realizing the fire was cleansing, not punishment. You're not softer, you're not more humble, you're accurate. You calculate your energy like currency. No more over-explaining, overextending, overdosing on people who never once read between your silences. You speak in fewer words, but every syllable lands like a verdict. And they keep asking themselves, how did you survive that? How did you come back from something that grotesque? They don't understand. You didn't come back. You came through. And what came through isn't here to make them comfortable. It's here to never go blind again, to never ignore the signs, to never explain away the warning bells in your gut just because the room said smile. You became fluent in your own pain, fluent in thresholds, fluent in who deserves access to you and who just wants proximity to your resilience. You're not just the person who handled the horrific situation. You're the person who never asked to be applauded for it, because applause was never the point. Power was. You don't wear the aftermath like a trophy. You wear it like a scar you stopped covering. Not because you want people to ask, but because it reminds you where your limits used to be. There's a version of you that died in that moment, in that mess, in that grotesque public unraveling. And nobody held a funeral. Nobody noticed the silence that followed. But you did. You buried the naive part of yourself with your own 2 hands, while smiling in rooms that wanted you dead, and dressed it up as polite concern. You gave your eulogy in your head while pretending to laugh at jokes that scraped across your raw skin. You kept walking anyway. That's the kind of resilience they don't teach. The kind that doesn't show up in motivational speeches or glossy timelines. The kind that's built in real time when your hands are shaking, your voice is gone, and your options have been narrowed down to one. Keep breathing or vanish completely. You didn't become stronger. You became stripped. Stripped of illusions, stripped of expectations, stripped of every lie you used to tell yourself just to feel like the world made sense. What's left is raw, unfiltered. Some would call it cold, but only because they've never had to freeze parts of themselves just to stay alive. You don't waste energy explaining anymore. You watch. You observe. You speak when it matters, and when it doesn't, you let the silence do the heavy lifting, because silence never lies. Well, well, well. Look who finally decided to notice. Welcome back, freaks, phonies, and professional pretenders. You want to hear a story? Too bad. This time, you're gonna feel it. You see, there was a time when they laughed at your silence, mocked your stillness. Every time you stepped back, they stepped on you like you were a rug they bought on discount. Too quiet, they said. Too awkward. Too intense. Too much for their paper-thin egos, but not enough for their thirsty attention spans. So what did they do? They tried to poke the bear. They thought you were background noise, a blank page, a filler scene in their clown show, just another prop, a jester with no punchline, somebody to entertain them when they're bored, but not somebody to understand, not somebody to respect, and certainly never somebody to fear. But here's what they didn't get. The quiet ones. We ain't quiet 'cause we got nothing to say. We're quiet 'cause we already heard everything. We already saw behind the curtain, behind the grins, behind the parties and fake applause. And deep down, when you stopped clapping, that's when they got scared. Because when the quiet ones go silent, that silence echoes. You've been too quiet lately. No, you've been studying. You've been calculating. You've been healing. You've been rebuilding the wreckage they left behind, like it was some kind of joke. And now you're not here to dance. You're here to detonate. They thought they broke you when you stopped smiling. They thought your silence was surrender. But what they didn't know is that every minute you were quiet, you were sharpening your teeth, and they're the next bite on the menu. You've been painted as the background character in everybody else's story. You were the listener, the filler, the sidekick, the soft voice in a loud room. But baby, let me tell you what happens when that quiet person starts to move. The whole room changes temperature. The whole room stops laughing. The whole room realizes they were never the main event. They were never the reason people were watching. You were. They tried to make you their entertainment, but you weren't built for their cheap applause. You were built for disruption. You were built to break patterns, not follow scripts. And now that you've outgrown the circus, they're crying because the clown doesn't want to play anymore. They say, why so distant? Why so cold? Because now your silence is colder than revenge. Now you don't clap back. You collapse timelines. Now you don't raise your voice. You raise questions they're too scared to answer. You're not here to amuse. You're not here to be liked. You're not here to fit into their story. You're here to end it. You've been quiet, and now you've become the one who doesn't need an audience, because the world is already watching, and it's watching in fear. They don't know what you're planning. They don't know when you'll strike, and that's entertainment they can't stomach. You're not someone's escape. You're the consequence. You're not their comic relief. You're the twist ending. You're not their entertainment. You're the reason they stopped laughing, and now they're squirming. See it? Hear it? The silence they once mocked. It's the same silence choking them now. You used to be the one trying to fill awkward pauses. Now you are the pause. The glitch in their matrix, the static in their signal, the ghost in the machine they can't delete. Because the moment you stopped performing for them, you forced them to look at themselves. And oh, they hate that. Because you're not just silent, you're a mirror. And what do weak people do in front of a mirror? They smash it. But this one? This mirror doesn't crack. This mirror reflects back every ounce of their fake smiles, bad intentions, and hollow jokes. They used to laugh with you until they realized they were always laughing at you. But now you don't laugh. Now you don't flinch. Now you don't even blink. You used to entertain them with your kindness. Now your absence is suffocating them. They miss the old you. Of course they do, because the old you was easier to control, easier to mock, easier to ignore. But you're not their favorite episode anymore. You're the plot twist that ruins the whole show. You've been quiet, because that's what power looks like before it explodes. You've been quiet, because you no longer beg to be heard. You make them listen without speaking. Oh, and now they're confused. You see them, don't you? Trying to provoke, trying to pull you back into the circus. But you're not coming back. You outgrew their stage. You shattered their spotlight. And now they sit in the dark, where they left you. You're not fun anymore. That's what they whisper now. Because you stopped bleeding for their amusement. Because you stopped showing up to battles you never started. Because you stopped lowering your frequency just to be understood by people who live in static. And the kicker, now that you're not entertaining them, now that you're not feeding their egos, they start whispering, "You've changed." Damn right you have. You evolved. You sharpened your silence into a weapon. And now, you've become lethal in the shadows. You've become the storm they can't predict. You've become the thunder after the quiet. They wanted a puppet, but you cut your strings. They wanted a fool, but you burned the stage. They wanted a show, but what they got is a reckoning. Because once the sealant one rises, there's no intermission, there's no encore, there's only correction. Your silence was the setup. Now you're the punchline. But this time, you're the one laughing. And it's not a giggle. It's a warning. You were never here to entertain. You were here to end the performance. You were here to pull the curtains. You were here to remind them that sometimes the quietest person in the room is the one holding the final script. So now here they are, scrambling, mumbling, clawing for the old version of you like addicts chasing a high they'll never taste again. Because when you were loud, they knew where you stood. When you were soft, they could step on you easy. But silence is unpredictable, and unpredictability, that's terror. You want to know why they're uncomfortable now? Because you stopped making them comfortable. You stopped showing up for their petty performances, stopped nodding at their lies, stopped smiling at their insults dressed up as jokes. You used to be their captive clown, bending just enough to be tolerated, but never enough to be truly accepted. Because deep down, they never wanted you strong. They wanted you available, on demand, emotionally naked, vulnerable, just enough to amuse them, but never enough to threaten them. But now, you ain't their therapy. You ain't their comic relief. You're not their fucking confessional booth. You're the silence that stings. You're the absence that haunts. You're the reminder that they can't control you anymore. You used to walk in the room with your light dimmed, your energy folded up like paper, so they wouldn't feel insecure. You used to shrink your truth so theirs could breathe, but now you've unfolded, you've expanded, you've outgrown every seat they ever tried to stuff you into. And now they call you too much, too cold, too distant, too mysterious. But let me tell you something. The ones who once clapped the loudest at your pain are now choking in your silence. Because silence has a way of echoing the truth, and they can't drown it out with noise anymore. They can't talk over you. They can't manipulate the script, because you've taken back the pen. You're not a character anymore. You're the damn director. And now that you're no longer entertaining them, now that your silence isn't a pause but a perimeter, now that you're not a court jester but the judge of your own peace, they're uncomfortable, they're unsettled, they're scared, because deep down, they know. You're not quiet because you've got nothing to say. You're quiet because you've seen too much, because you've felt everything, because you've survived all of it. And now you're choosing silence as a shield, as a sword, as a sanctuary. And what's more terrifying than someone who's been through hell and came back with their voice intact, but doesn't need to use it? They called it your weakness. They whispered, "He's different now. She's acting strange." What they meant was, we can't control them anymore. You were never here to amuse. You were here to awaken, to disturb the performance, to derail their expectations, to remind the world what happens when the one they laughed at learns how to smile with blood in their mouth. And now the game's changed. Now you're not knocking for entry. You're kicking the door off the hinges. You're done asking to be seen, because now you're the one they can't look away from. You're the one whose silence roars louder than their entire orchestra of noise. Let's finish what they accidentally started. You see then, they didn't expect this. They thought you'd stay quiet long enough to self-destruct, long enough to fade away, long enough for them to rewrite your story without resistance. But oh no, you weren't breaking, you were building. Every insult, brick. Every betrayal, mortar. Every time they looked past you like you were nothing but a shadow on the wall. You were crafting the fortress that now casts the shadow they live in. They had no clue that the silent one was the only one listening, that the quiet person in the corner was the one mapping every betrayal, every manipulation, every double-edged compliment masked in sugar. And now that you've pulled back, now that you've stopped responding, they're losing it. Because you're no longer predictable. You're no longer available on command. You're no longer the punching bag turned therapist, turned magician they summoned when their worlds fell apart. Now you're the one they're trying to read, but your silence? Encrypted. They can't crack you. They can't reach you. They can't use you anymore. And that makes them itch. Because people don't fear your presence. They fear what you've become in your absence. You're no longer at the table, but they still feel you staring through the walls. They still feel your silence like a knife to their throat they can't remove. Let me say it louder. You are not their entertainment. You're the unfinished sentence in their script, the skipped heartbeat in their plan, the one who doesn't perform anymore because you never needed their applause. You needed your power back. And now that you've taken it, they're scrambling to remember what life felt like before you stopped dancing for their amusement. They want you back? Of course they do, but not the real you. They want the version they could manage, the diluted one. The one that swallowed pain with a smile and stayed silent so no one felt uncomfortable. But that version, dead, buried beneath the weight of every time you were told to lighten up. Every time they laughed at your fire and called it too intense. Every time they used your emotions like a stage light, when it suited them. But now the stage is empty, and the light is on them. And guess what? They can't perform. You've been quiet because you've seen the truth behind the curtain. You've seen the egos, the envy, the snakes in suits and smiles. You've seen how they treat the ones who give too much and ask for too little. And you've made a decision. Never again. Never again will you trade your silence for validation. Never again will you drain your soul just to entertain their emptiness. Never again will you give them the script, the spotlight, and the power. Because now, you're the storm they didn't see coming. You're the hush that precedes destruction. You're the reason they check their mirrors twice. You're the silence that carries the scream they tried to bury. And oh, how poetic it is that the one they dismissed as too quiet is now the loudest consequence of all. You were never the show. You were never the jester in their cheap little drama. You were the foreshadowing, the tension in the air before the walls collapse, the eyes in the corner no one noticed, until it was too late. And now your silence is no longer a mystery. It's a message, not in words, not in volume, but in presence. And that's what breaks them. They've tried to bait you back, haven't they? Tried to provoke you with sarcasm, with gossip, with mock sympathy. They want to see if you still flinch, if they still matter. But you don't react. Because you're no longer in the business of reacting. You're in the business of ending chapters. You don't owe them an outburst. You don't owe them closure. You don't owe them anything. Because the moment they reduced you to background noise, the moment they rolled their eyes when you spoke, the moment they called you too much just to shrink your truth into something they could swallow. They gave up the right to understand your silence. Now they're just spectators, spectators of your rebirth, spectators of the reckoning that walks in smiling, but doesn't say a word. You're not cold, you're calculated, you're not distant, you're dangerous, and not in the way they imagined, not loud, not violent, not messy. No, you're dangerous because you're unbothered. You're dangerous because you don't need their approval anymore. You're dangerous because they can't figure out where you stand, and that uncertainty, that eats them alive. You once explained yourself. Now you watch them drown in their own confusion. You once begged to be heard. Now you let the silence speak louder than any scream ever could. And the truth is, they're haunted, not by what you said, but by what you didn't. They remember the old you, the accommodating version, the soft-spoken one, the one that folded your soul into paper cranes just to decorate their chaos. But now, you don't fold, you don't bend, you break patterns. And when they come looking, desperate for the version of you that catered to their ego, all they find is stillness. Stillness that feels like judgment. Stillness that tastes like truth. Stillness that reminds them you were never theirs to mold. You were just too powerful for their small world to contain. You've become surgical, precise, emotionally scalpel sharp. You walk in a room, say nothing, and people adjust themselves. Not because you said something offensive, but because your silence threatens to unravel the performance they're trying to uphold. That's what happens when you stop being available. You become unavoidable. And now they whisper behind curtains. Why are they acting different? What's gotten into them? But the truth is, nothing got into you. Something finally got out. The mask, the guilt, the need to be liked, gone. And what remains is someone who doesn't flinch when left alone. Someone who doesn't perform just to be invited. Someone who no longer bleeds to be understood. So no, you're not their entertainment. You're not a reaction. You're not a meme. You're not a relief from their own inner rot. You're the one who went quiet and now stands tall while everything around them crumbles. Because that's what happens when they mistake your peace for weakness. They forget that peace is chosen by those who already won the war. Let's burn what's left. No survivors, not of their lies, not of your former self, and certainly not of their delusions, because now your silence isn't just presence, it's prophecy. Every time they hear your name in a room, they shift in their seat. Every time the conversation dips into silence, they think of you because they know you're not done. You're just done with them. You stopped entertaining, now you haunt. You're the thought they choke on mid-sentence. The memory that makes their stomach twist. Because you didn't storm out. You evaporated. You didn't argue. You evolved. You didn't fight back. You froze them in place with nothing but silence. And that's what makes you lethal. They underestimated the cost of ignoring a soul like yours. They thought silence meant defeat. They thought distance meant disinterest. But it was never that. It was detachment. It was you reclaiming your throne by walking away from their stage. It was you saying, I'm not here to play the role you wrote for me anymore. Because now, you write your own script. And the first line reads, do not approach. Not safe for cowards. They thought they could forget you, erase you, replace you. But legends don't vanish, they echo. And you've become the voice that echoes through their quietest moments. When the party's over, when the masks come off, when the lights go out and all they're left with is the memory of the one who refused to perform for them anymore. You're the question that ruins their sleep. You're the sentence that never ends. You're the silence that feels like a scream they'll never understand. You're not a phase. You're a scar, and scars don't fade. They remind every single time. Let them wonder. Let them ask. Let them circle back, trying to decode you like some unsolvable riddle. Because you've outgrown language. You've outgrown being understood by people who never deserved access to your mind in the first place. You no longer explain. You no longer chase. You no longer speak just to be heard. Now you move in prophecy. Every step a prediction, every silence a promise, every gaze a death sentence to their expectations. And when they ask themselves, how did we lose them? Let them choke on the answer. Let them suffocate in the silence you left behind. Because the moment they made your pain a punchline, the moment they turned your heart into a stage, they earned their own front row seat to your ascension. Not flashy, not loud, just surgical, spiritual, savage. You were never entertainment. You were the lesson. And now, you're the reason they flinch when someone too quiet walks into the room. Because they know what choir people become. They become storms. They become mirrors. They become monuments to everything you should never underestimate. And now, we arrive at the end. Not yours, theirs. The end of the illusion. The end of your silence being mistaken for submission. The end of their little game. Because the main character finally walked off set and took the whole damn script with them. See, silence was never your weakness. It was your cocoon. And while they laughed, mocked, gossiped, and filled rooms with noise, you were transforming, molting, shedding every version of yourself that ever danced for crumbs. And now, you don't even fit the same rooms anymore. You're too big, too sharp, too aware. They tried to shrink you, but they forgot one thing. You can't shrink a storm. And now that you've arrived, silent and still, yet impossible to ignore, they're all asking the same question. What happened to them? Let me answer that for them. You stopped showing up as someone's entertainment. You stopped bleeding for people who only loved you when you were bleeding quietly. You stopped handing over your peace like it was community property. You stopped explaining to people who were never listening anyway. You woke up. And when the quiet ones wake up, they don't shout. They rearrange realities. You don't beg to be seen now. You make people feel the absence of your light until it burns their eyes. You don't ask to be heard. You let the silence grow so loud, it devours their confidence. You don't seek revenge, because now you are revenge. A walking reminder that they had access, and they wasted it. You're not their closure. You're their unfinished chapter, the one they'll reread 1,000 times and never understand. You're not a lesson. You're the exam they failed.